That's everyone. Please let me know if the background music is too loud and if you can hear me okay. Divine blessings, Miraji. I hope you're doing good. Okay, great. I'll just take a couple minutes to kind of settle in. Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Aim Saraswati Namaha. Om Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Swaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamamritat. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Divine blessings, everyone that's able to attend tonight's Satsang for Yoga Vasistha. It's good to see you, Miraji, Sadashivaji, Rohitaji. We'll be picking back up in book 1, Vairagya Prakarana, and it is this book, which you can get. This is volume 1. There's 2 of these, and you can get it on yrf.org. That's the Yoga Research Foundation website. We'll be on page 91, section 28. the transient nature of all sense enjoyments. And while I was preparing to get ready for tonight's satsang, I actually pulled out Guruji's book that he had recently published earlier in the year, and there was a very fitting entry for tonight, so I wanted to start off with that. And so I'm just going to read this, and y'all can keep this in mind as we go through tonight's satsang on the transient nature. So this is from his book, and it's right at the beginning of chapter 9, which is "The world is but an illusion." Your two physical eyes keep you limited to time and space. Open your third eye in order to experience transcendental vision. This is your vertical eye that connects you to the divine. Focus on this and experience bliss. Life is a drama. The world is the stage. Man is the actor and God is the director. As soon as the show is over, we must pack our bags and go home. The show is simply a drama, an act. Do not get too attached to this show. Yet, we must perform the best role that we possibly can. Each person in this drama of life has a specific role to play in interacting with us. Thus, look at all things with a sense of transience. In real life, the actor is much different than the role he performs. Much in the same way, we are not what we appear to be. A combination of this body, mind, senses, intellect, and ego. We are much deeper than that. We are the immortal soul. Our purpose in human life is to reconnect to our soul. Unless this profound lesson is understood properly, we will continue to perform different roles as actors in different bodies through the process of reincarnation. The only problem is that we do not realize that we are acting. We think all of this is real, which continues to keep the illusion going from one embodiment to another. Discover that you are only an actor, thereby freeing yourself from the stage of the world and go to your true home, liberation, where the cycles of life and death are terminated forever. So I found that really fitting for tonight. Because the topic of the transient nature of everything, and then also in a way our attachments, because we become attached to the sense enjoyments, and we become to attach to the things that we interact with through our five senses of the human embodiment. And these are limited senses. This is on that physical plane. And so part of our spiritual journey and our practice is going beyond these five senses. And that's why in meditation we quiet them down and we kind of like silence them. So you work on not paying attention to what you hear, you close your eyes or lower your eyelids and focus on one thing in front of you, like an object or a picture or a candle flame. It's always a good idea, like, if you use incense, it's fine, but smells, don't have something going that's too distracting. Make sure your mouth is clean. That's also something that not many people think of, is if you've eaten recently, you can be distracted by the food that is stuck in your teeth or the taste of the meal that you just ate. And so you just have to think about your different senses, like even the clothing, simple, loose-fitting clothing, not something itchy or tight or distracting or anything like that. Okay, so Yoga Vasistha, we are on section 28, the transient nature of all sense enjoyments. And we actually covered this with Guruji, I believe, back in August. either this year. Yeah, I think so. Okay. All this visible world, consisting of conscious and inert objects, is transient, like a conference held in a dream. Today, where there is an ocean with unfathomable depths, tomorrow there will arise a mountain kissing the sky. And if you picture that in your head, and you can imagine how all the oceans have changed, and you can think of volcanoes and different mountains that pop up out of the water, and geographically just how these things are changing. Nothing ever is the same, ever, at all. So on a big scale, oceans and volcanoes and mountains, islands is an easy way to think of the transients. Today, the physical body of a person is being adorned with silken clothes, beautiful ornaments, and lovely cosmetics. Tomorrow, it will lie desolate in the cremation grounds. So this talks about and kind of puts a light on the attachment of our outer experience. Yeah, I guess you could use the word experience. Our outer appearance, but also experience with our clothing, the way we look, the attachments to our makeup, and just that outward appearance. But for me personally, one of my things, some of you know, but many of you might not, I was extremely sick in 2020 through like 2022, and I went through hair loss. Like, I had really long, waist-long hair, and then I cut my hair off to make things easier, and I had a lot of hair loss happening. And so I ended up shaving my hair, and so my hair is actually really short. But that was something that it was personally a challenge for me to do, even though it was for medical reasons, and it made life easier and more simple at the same time. My long hair was something that a lot of people mentioned about me, and it became something that, like, I became attached to, and I never let anyone cut it. I didn't go get it trimmed. So it was really hard to go through that. And I mean, hair is transient. It can be cut off and it can grow back. It doesn't define us. It doesn't define who we are. And so the same thing can go with like jewelry and cosmetics and all these things. In the end of this human embodiment that we currently have, what does it all mean? Where did it get us? Did it get us any farther than, like it says in the scriptures, the cremation grounds? Because in the end, we are back to the earth. We all become dust. We're all the same 5 elements, and that's all we are. Our clothing, our jewelry, our makeup, all the outward appearances and the things that we have, that's not who we are. That's not how we should be defining ourselves and who we are either. Today, where there is a thriving city with numerous inhabitants involved in diverse activities, tomorrow there will exist a barren desert. This is really interesting to think about, and kind of throughout when I was reading this earlier, it had me thinking of like ancient Greece and Egypt. And when you think of hundreds of years ago, and these places had thriving cities. They had communities. There were people working. There were families. There were titles, positions, leaders, all that kind of stuff. And they were thriving places. And then now many of these places are barren and they're not thriving anymore, or they have been covered over many, many years, and now a more modern city has been built on top. But even things like that, where, like, I live in Houston, in Texas, and although it's a very busy, thriving business city, tomorrow it could be gone. I don't know that. Nobody knows that, because everything is transient. Today there is a person who is immensely powerful, who is a majestic ruler. Tomorrow he will be reduced to dust. So even the rulers, or if you think of like the president or the prime ministers, or just any leaders of any countries, or even businesses or organizations, that's transient too. That title is transient. The position is transient. That person can be gone the next day, and then someone else fills that place. And so even with important titles, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. No one is guaranteed tomorrow. Today there is a green forest abounding with trees, creepers, herbs, and silvery streams. Tomorrow it will be converted into a busy city with thousands of people. And this is another thing that's happening, and this is happening all over the world, where so much green space and the open land and these forests and the meadows and the woods and the mountains, they are being bought up and they're being built on, because there's more people living, there's more businesses being put up, and so it goes from nature to another form of nature, where it's the human nature's coming in and taking over and turning it into something different. And so nature itself is transient and it can change. And we enjoy these places. We enjoy going to the woods or the parks, and you go walking or hiking or taking your dog out for a walk or just enjoying nature, and suddenly these things can be taken away. And an example of this is actually in our area. There's it's like a big pond kind of lake thing that a lot of people walk around. And there was a business, and they do like horseback riding, equine therapy, I think it's called. But another business is coming in and cutting down all of the trees, and that's where a lot of their trails were. And so there's this constant wiping out of nature and green spaces in order to put in more businesses, more neighborhoods, more apartments, things like that. And so even the people that enjoy taking their horses out are now unable to do so because the trails are destroyed. Childhood, youth, body, properties, and possessions, all these are transitory. Like waves rising and falling in the ocean, so do these come and go in this world process. So this one was always kind of funny for when I would talk about this with Guruji, because we all started off as babies, And then we were infants and toddlers and children and teenagers, etc., etc. And we grew and we changed, but were we ever attached to our baby form or our toddler form? No, we more than likely were not. But then the farther you get and you become older and you hit more of the elderly age, or just like the 60s, 70s, and then that regret kind of kicks in, or the looking back, that attachment on the younger body, and then that realizing that the transient nature of the human body. And so our human body is always changing. Every millisecond there's something changing, especially on the cellular level. Your whole body is just made up of a bunch of mush and chemicals, to put it simply. And those levels are always changing. Your hydration levels are changing, your iron levels are changing, potassium's changing, everything's changing. And so all of that is transient. And it compares it to the waves of an ocean that are rising and falling, and we see those waves, and they go up and they go down. They don't ever stay up, and they don't ever stay down. Even when the waters are still, eventually the waves will come. And so, like waves rising and falling in the ocean, so do these come and go in this world process. Excuse me. As fickle as the flame of a lamp buffeted by the wind, so is this life, like the flashing of lightning from the dark clouds. The flame is a good analogy for the human embodiment, because when you think of like your candle, I have one, so we'll have an example. So it still has some glass around it, but you can see it's kind of dancing a bit because there's a fan on in here. But it's fickle, it's not still. It's still moving and jumping and dancing around because of the wind from the fan. And so that's how our life is. That's how this human embodiment is. And that's also how our thinking and thoughts of the mind can be, and they just kind of bounce around. And when I was thinking about this earlier, because it said like the flashing of lightning from the dark clouds, when you really think about life and death and how it happens to everybody, but most people walk around not thinking about it. But it's happening. I don't know what the statistics are technically, but there's so many lives that are born, and then there's also so many that are leaving. And like the flashing of lightning from the dark clouds, it made me picture in my mind like the earth from more of like a space view, and it's just like kind of sparkling and flashing, and that's so much energy and life going on, and it's the transient nature, but at the same time it can be so beautiful. So that was something that just went through my head when I read that. This part is why I found the entry in Guruji's book pretty relevant to tonight's discussions. It says, this world process is like an actress assuming different roles and playing different parts. She continues to weave a web of magic as she dances. Her eyes are fickle like flashes of lightning. She has veiled the truth of Brahman by her enchantments of names and forms. And so like Guruji would always explain how this life is like a play, and the world is a stage, and we're all actors playing all these different parts all these different roles. Like for myself, as an example, as a mother, as a sister, as an aunt, as a daughter. And these are different roles, these are different titles that I have in this human embodiment. They don't define who I am technically. In essence, this is not who I am. These are just titles. For this body, it's a form. People see me, and from the outside, that is a woman, that is a younger woman. She wears glasses, she wears short hair, she has earrings, she's wearing a sweater, she has a kid with her, so she must be a mom, etc., etc. And so those are all just names and forms, and that's on the physical plane, and that's how most people are thinking. And that's where we get stuck, and the illusion, the cosmic illusion of Maya, and it's everywhere, and we're just stuck in it like a web, and we have to work our way out of this. And the truth of who we are is beyond all these names and these forms. You can look at other people. An example would be like a cashier at a store. That cashier could also be a father or a brother or an uncle, or he could have another job and he could be like a food delivery driver, or he fixes cars for a living. And those are just names and titles and different roles that are being played by that person as an actor on the stage of the world. O sage, there were great men experiencing great prosperities and achievements, performing great sacrifices and majestic deeds. Where are they now? They dwell only in our memories. In the same way, we too will pass away, leaving behind our memories. And this is very true. So many people have lived and died, and they have spent their lifetime working towards various achievements and gaining things, whether it's just a status, like a career status, or if they're working towards wealth or a big house or multiple cars or paying off college tuition, whatever it is. You can just think of anyone that has done these things that can be considered big, and these sacrifices and these good deeds, but where are they now? Where are the people from a few hundred years ago? They did great things, but they're not around anymore because the physical embodiment was transient. The most they are is a memory in people who know who they are, or they're basically typed out in a textbook in school, and students learn about it that way. And so that, when you think about that, and in regards to life being transient, and we will become a memory to our loved ones and our family and the people that know us. When my physical body expires, whoever knows me in this form, in this embodiment, I will just be a memory, and that's it. And so how, like I discussed last week, how am I going to spend this lifetime? Am I going to waste it by being idle, gossiping and just wasting time in sense enjoyments. People go out drinking and partying or shopping, all these temporary things. And then you come closer to what you would call your expiration date, and why would you want to freak out and have regrets about how you spent your life? Because we're all going to pass away, and the only thing that we are leaving behind, other than if you've written off your physical possessions in a will or something, the only other thing is you're leaving memories. And so what kind of memories do you want people to have of you? Do you want them to have good ones, bad ones, funny ones, sad ones? And so that's something to think about with how we spend this human embodiment, because we only get one. This world is being destroyed every day. It is being created every day as well. This unending process of creation and destruction continues always. And so this is very true. The world is being destroyed every day, and it's being created every day. And it's constant, and it has been constant for as long as human beings even know. It is beyond our comprehension. Because everything is transient. Nature is transient. And so forests, you think of a forest fire. So I know in California and more up north, we have some down here in Texas, but not as major. But forest fires, they wipe out acres and acres of trees and land, and then over time it's recreated, it's regenerated in a way, if that's the right term to use. And so it's never ending. And you can even think of trying to remember the name of the place, one of y'all might have to help me out on this. I'm drawing a blank. I think Hiroshima, where all the nuclear reactors are. But that place, but when you look at pictures of it, and you can see how nature is actually growing over these buildings and growing over the debris and the possessions and everything that had been left behind during that. And so even though there's so much destruction, there's also creation. And we can think of volcanoes also, where volcanoes can erupt, like in Hawaii, and then there can be new growth from this because of the minerals. And so this process of creation, destruction is always going on. Yes, Sadashivaji. I think that's what I'm talking about. Possibly. Please feel free to correct me. My history is not that great. But the creation and destruction is always happening. So you can even, in like a simple way to think about it, when you bathe and wash your face or take a shower and you exfoliate your skin, you have your skin cells are being removed. And so it's like the destruction and they're being removed, but then you have cellular regrowth happening. And so even on our own bodies, this is going on, even when we can't see it. individual souls continue to embody in different forms as men, animals, trees, or heavenly gods and perfected beings. There is nothing steady or immutable in this world. And so that's just saying how the individual souls in this cycle of birth and death, and they can come in different forms. So the human form is the one that you want, per se, because the humans have the intellect, they have the capacity to distinguish right from wrong and to make choices. And so we're able to take our path of whatever spiritual path that you want to take, whereas you can't exactly do that as an animal or a tree. But the animals and the trees, those are the lower planes of existence, and the heavenly gods and perfected beings. So when you think about our karmas and what we're having to live out, basically good karmas and bad karmas, if you think of it that way. So for example, if you have a bunch of like bad karmas and you die, the physical embodiment is over, and so now you're gonna come back as a tree, and you gotta wait around to be chopped down or whatever, and then you come back again. And so even coming back as an animal or a tree, and even the heavenly gods and the perfected beings, they basically envy the human beings. So you can get all your good karmas and you're in the heavenly abodes, and then you come back as a human being because you're working towards liberating the soul. And many people, you can be good and you can do good without the goal of liberation. And that's kind of like an example of someone that might go to the heavenly abode. And so there's nothing steady or immutable in this world. All beings, whether dwelling in higher celestial planes or in the grosser planes of existence, are like dry logs of wood to be consumed by the fire of time. With death waiting at one's door, all one's possessions, prosperities, near and dear relatives, friends, and glorious attainments appear vain and essenceless. So death is waiting at everyone's door. Everything we've worked for, everything we own, our belongings, even the family members that we have, our relatives and our friends, in essence, it appears in vain because we did all these things, but then we die. And so it's such a temporary, small piece of time that we have, and we spend a lot of it not thinking of death at our door, which I'm not encouraging people to go down the rabbit hole and causing themselves anxiety by thinking of death a lot. But it is important to understand that all the things that we might have, like in our house, all of our furniture, or we have book collections or movie collections, or you have a jewelry box full of jewelry, all these things that you've attained and accumulated for, at the end of your physical embodiment, what are all these things for? What was the purpose of attaining them? Was it to feed your ego or self-gratification? It's all temporary. I can look around this room right now, which is just a spare room, and I can see a few things on a shelf, and it's like, oh, why did I buy that? It's probably just to feel good in the moment. And right now I look at it as just another thing that has to be cleaned and dusted. So it's in vain. There's nothing behind it. There's nothing that I get from it anymore. If I die tomorrow, that ends in the trash. And that's about it. The objects appear charming only as long as the mind is not acquainted with the transitory nature of all things in the world. And I actually have this kind of like bracketed because this was on my spiritual journey. So I came across Guruji Swami Nikhilananda like at the end of 2019. I came across him through someone on Facebook and came across the YouTube channel. And over time of like daily learning and studying, it actually became quite a funny thing. And Guruji and myself would laugh about how I changed in the way that I was thinking, because I was a shopper. I loved to shop, and I used to get a lot of gratification out of it. And at the time, I didn't realize it was such a transitory, temporary, unimportant thing. And because in the moment it felt good, I would come home with bags, and it was exciting, and you get to mess with whatever you had. And the objects appeared charming, and you got a lot of enjoyment out of it, like new clothing. So the sense enjoyment of the new clothing is your texture, the tactile, or a new perfume or body spray or cologne is the sense of smell, the aromas. Or if you bought CDs, so new music, so what you're hearing, all these different things. And they're charming, and it's okay to enjoy your things. I'm not saying that throw everything away, because that would not be good. Yes, Sada Shivaji. And so it was always funny, because now I find it more of an annoyance, and I think back on how I would shop. And I was a shopper to where whenever we went to Target, I had to go up and down like every single aisle, and we could be in Target for several hours. And yeah, it was pretty bad. I was just fascinated with everything, and I loved finding the good deals and the clearance. And then I felt like super successful, like I saved so much money on all this random stuff. But then when I began learning more about how the mind works and how powerful the mind is and how transient objects are, and how transient the nature of everything truly, truly is, including my own life, almost losing my life. And that was in itself a wake-up call of, whoa, like I've wasted so much time on a bunch of crap. And I don't regret it necessarily, because it led me to where I am today, and these are all lessons that are learned that I take with me. But it's a real wake-up call to how temporary everything in the world truly, truly is, including yourself. In a moment, a man of immense wealth is converted into a pauper. In a moment, a person of radiant health becomes a helpless patient, suffering from a debilitating disease. The world continues to change like the colors of a chameleon. And so even the wealthy people, like the guy that owns Amazon, or what's that other guy, Elon Musk. I'm not real connected with all this kind of stuff, so I don't know all these people's names. But the really, really wealthy people that are famous and everything, in an instant, they could lose it all. They could absolutely lose it all. And what are you gonna do in that moment? When you think, like, if you think of someone with so much wealth and then suddenly it is gone and they've defined their whole existence around this wealth, and that's pain, and that attachment is pain. Attachment brings pain and sorrow. There isn't anything healthy in regards to that type of attachment. And even a person of radiant health becoming a helpless patient suffering from a debilitating disease. That, once again, a personal experience for myself, which kind of led me down my spiritual journey, was looking for answers to why I went through what I did. Why did I survive something that was designed by nature to not be survivable? And so that was a huge wake-up call to losing one's health, because my own health got so bad to where I couldn't walk, I couldn't take care of myself. My husband was picking me up, putting me on the toilet, bathing me, brushing my hair, cleaning up my vomit, like everything. I was bedridden, incapacitated. I weighed like 85 pounds at my lowest. It was really, really bad. And I didn't have problems prior to it. I caught a bacterial infection, which caused a lot of it, and it went undiagnosed for a long time because of the pandemic. And because of that, I ended up with permanent damage. And so now the physical body I have has a debilitating disease and chronic illness. And so in a moment, it can be taken away. It can change. You can go from living your ordinary life to being in the back of the ambulance twice a week for several years, and the hospitals don't know what to do with you. And going from walking and mobile to being completely immobile and relying on other people, and then having to learn to walk again and gain strength back all over again, and then learning to live a new, not necessarily a new life, it's the same life, but it's just different. It changed because it's transient. It's never the same. It's not going to stay the same. And so for me, that was adapting to living, like daily living, and like keeping up with chores, raising children, having a pet, managing medications, learning to eat food again, and what foods I could and couldn't have. Everything was just kind of flipped upside down, and I had to relearn everything in a new way. And so the world continues to change like the colors of a chameleon. So yeah, because life goes on. Everything changed for me, but the world keeps turning. It keeps going. And even when we go through not just moments of poor health, but struggling financially or losing a loved one, all these moments, all these experiences, all these events, they're transient, and the world keeps turning. Everything keeps changing. It's never ever the same. It doesn't stay the same. At times the sky is overcast with dark clouds. At times it is filled with the milky whiteness of the full moon. At times it resounds with the sound of thunder. At times there is a rain of serenity. At times the stars adorn the blue expansion of the sky. At times it is lit up with the rays of the sun. Even like the changing conditions of the sky, this world is a transitory process. And this is a really beautiful explanation that I believe everybody can understand. Because nature itself and the sky, I'm someone that I like going and looking at the sky really early in the morning, because I get up really early and I'm outside feeding cats, and when it's clear, it's still dark. It's really, really dark outside at like 4:30. But you can see the stars, and then around like 6:30-ish is when you start seeing all the colors coming, and it's changing, and the sky is changing, and then you see the movement of the sun, and then the moon's going the other way, and so there's so much going on, and it's so visual and immersive when you're just out there watching it. And a lot of people can relate to that, especially on social media, because a lot of people enjoy taking pictures of the sunrise and the sunsets. And so we know that it's transitory. We've all experienced storms. And so it can go from being sunshiny to rainy, and it can feel dreary, or it can feel refreshing. It can go from being really hot in the summer to really cold in the winter. And it doesn't ever stay the same, even if it was an area of the world where it might seem like the weather is the same. Technically, it's not. Within moments, a person encounters adversities. Within moments, he is blessed with unexpected prosperities. Within moments, a person is overcome by death. Within moments, his soul enters into another embodiment. Is there anything in this world which is not momentary and transient? And so Lord Rama is bringing up in this part where it can be so fast. It can be a split second where you can go from prosperity to experiencing an adversity. You can be going through adversity and then suddenly go through prosperity. These are all, there's two sides to everything. Within moments, a person is overcome by death, where moments before, they could have been very healthy. They could have been the epitome of health, but it could be a car accident or just something momentarily happen, and then the physical body is overcome by death. And so we have to remember how quickly these things can happen, how transient things can be, how fast things change, and not be attached in an unhealthy manner. The attachments that the majority of people have to things, even things that we don't realize we might be attached to, And then when we have them, everything's like hunky-dory, everything's fine, we're happy, we're content. And then when this thing or this person is no longer here and it is gone, we experience the pain, the sorrow, and that's due to the transient nature of the world process. Nothing of this world is permanent, and everything is always changing. It's always growing. It's always aging. Human personality is constantly overcome by birth, death, hunger, thirst, childhood, youth, and old age. Like alternating days and nights, prosperity and adversity continue to visit a person one after another. So this can be expanded to the topic of equanimity of mind. And that's one of the things that on this spiritual path that we learn in regards to our experiences and our emotions and thoughts that we might have. And when we go through moments of adversity, challenges, and things like that, we want to look at everything as a witness to what's going on and try to keep that level-headedness, because if, for example, prosperity, if you suddenly come into money or something really grand and great happens and you become really attached to it, or you let whatever this is define you, when that's gone or you no longer have it, that pain will be even stronger that you will experience. And adversity, if you're going through something hard and you're dwelling on it and your mind is just consumed with what's happening and what's going on, and that isn't helpful, and the thoughts are just kind of doing their own thing and taking over. But when we remember that these things are transient, it's easier to kind of ease up on our feelings and our emotions and our perspectives of adversity, because like Guruji's always taught us, this too shall pass. And that's very true in my experience. A lot of things that I've gone through seemed like they would last forever. It seemed like I could never dig myself out of it. And I'm here today, and I overcame all those things that I thought I never would. And so everything does alternate. There's good and bad. There's days and nights, prosperity and adversity. And they're just gonna keep on cycling in our life in various ways. Like, you could just think of like a million different things. A strong person is often destroyed by a weak person. At times, even a very unworthy person rises to great heights of fame and prosperity. At times, even great persons are devoid of any external forms of success and prosperity. This one took me a little while to think on, and my interpretation of it, especially the first sentence, a strong person is often destroyed by a weak person. At first glance, it kind of does not make sense. But in the physical aspect, a strong person can be destroyed by a weak person. When you think of weak as in weak-minded, or or even a strong person, like if they're physically strong, they can be overcome and destroyed by their own anger or their own ego or their own greed. At times, even a very unworthy person rises to great heights of fame and prosperity. And so this happens in the world, especially nowadays with the internet and all different types of businesses and stuff like that, where people can become famous and they can end up with a lot of wealth, popularity, things like that. But behind the scenes, they are an unworthy person for this, because it's saying like scammers or people that cheat their way through life to get name and fame and glory and all that. And so they're doing these things for themselves at the expense of other people. At times, even great persons are devoid of any external forms of success and prosperity. This one reminded me of the sadhus and the sages and saints that Guruji met and spent time with over in India on his journey, not only this year, but when he was over in 2022 also. And they're such great personalities and great souls, but so simple. So they don't have all the fancy showness or anything like that. They're just simple. That simple living, but elevated living in a way, because the mind is more elevated, because they are not focused and they're not living the materialistic living. They're not basing everything on external forms and success and stuff like that. Hardly have the childhood days of simplicity been enjoyed when there emerges youth with its multicolored illusions. Hardly have the youthful days been experienced when there advances old age with increasing debility and mental weakness. Even in this body, there is no steadiness. How can we expect steadiness from other things of the world? And so we go through our embodiment, and this is explaining like the transient nature of the human embodiment and kind of what we go through. So in your childhood days, everything's kind of simple and fun and playtime and toys and all that kind of stuff. And then over time, you age and you get older. And so the things now, like for an example, you might be like 10, 11, or 12. The things that you once thought were the coolest thing ever when you were like 4 or 5 is not so cool now. And so the way you thought changed, and this is due to the illusions, but you're experiencing them at a younger age, so you're unaware that these things are happening. And then you become a youth, and then like an older youth, so like a teenager, and so now you're a raging hormonal teenager, and you're going through all those feelings and all those illusions and attractions and feelings and everything. And then you age again, and middle age, and that comes with its own aches and pains of the physical body and having to see the doctor more often. And then old age, where there's the increasing debility, and mental weakness, and so that's more of like our mobility and walking, getting around, being able to do things independently. And mental weakness can be like people that experience Alzheimer's or dementia, and just with old age, some people just call it senile, but it's just part of the brain itself is also aging. So in the human body, there's no steadiness. It is always changing, and it's never staying the same. I'm 37, and I've been every other age prior to that. I've never been one age the whole time, and I'm going to continue aging. This body is going to continue changing. And so how can we expect steadiness from other things in the world? How can we live in a world and look at everything else and expect it to stay the same? We can't stay the same. The human bodies can't stay the same. Human bodies are kind of like the mechanics of, I was going to say the mechanics of the world, but think more of like economics and the community. And so it's humans at all these jobs, and it makes all the gears turn, and so money comes in, money goes out, businesses work, businesses run. But none of that is going to last. We might think it will, and we might want it to, but it's not. So how can we expect everything outside of us to be steady and to never change if our own body is not steady? The mind is happy at times filled with depressing thoughts, at times dull and distracted, at other times serene and joyous, at times filled with dispassion, at times involved in worldly pleasures. Within a moment it becomes cheerful, and within a moment it sinks into dejection. Even mental states are transient and short-lived. And this is another reminder of this too shall pass. It is normal for the human mind to go through a range of emotions and thoughts and things like that, and that's another deeper topic when you go into the gunas, the 3 gunas. And so there's going to be these times where we're going to feel sad for whatever reason, or we're going to feel just kind of dull and bleh or bored, or we might feel distracted and we can't pay attention to things. We might be happy, excited, joyous. Sometimes we don't want things, sometimes we do want things, sometimes we're not involved with worldly pleasure, and then sometimes we are. And so this is how the human mind in itself is transient, and our thoughts and emotions that are experienced by the soul it's like a roller coaster, like up and down, and we're just kind of in it for the ride. But we have to remember that they're short-lived, and I do want to kind of put a disclaimer on this because mental health is a very serious topic, and we should not ignore people's mental health. So if someone listening is having depressive thoughts or other types of negative thoughts where it needs to be addressed by a professional, I fully support that. That is a discussion that myself and Guruji always had, was being practical. We have to be practical in this world, and as much as we might not want to do something, sometimes we have to, and that's okay. And the way that I liked to look at it was to the best way to respect God and to honor God and this gift of a human embodiment that we have been blessed with is to take care of it. And that includes physically, mentally, and emotionally the best way that we can. And so for anyone experiencing mental health challenges, it's always encouraged to seek out the help that you might need to help you get back on track or to get whatever it is that you need. And that's fine. It's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong or bad about it. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer on that, because I don't want someone to think that like, oh, I don't need XYZ anymore, I don't need to take my meds anymore, or I don't need therapy anymore, and then they end up struggling even more. People grow like corn to be cooked and eaten up by the Creator, who continues the process of creation and destruction with an unrelenting succession. And so it's kind of a funny analogy. If you think of all the humans like a field of corn, like crops of corn being grown and then cooked, and then more is grown and cooked. And so it's just kind of a funny way of thinking about it if you imagine it. But that is how human beings are. It's this constant cycle of being born and raised, and then the body ceases to be, and then more people are born and raised and cease to be, and it just keeps going and going. And so it's like we're grown to be eaten by the Creator in a way. Neither adversity nor prosperity is abiding in this world. All is transitory and short-lived. This time spirit continues to change the things of the world with ruthless vehemence. Like fruits that fall from trees, people continue to fall day by day into the gaping jaws of death, shaken by the wind of time. So adversity and prosperity, neither one is abiding. So we're not always going to have adversity. We're not always going to have prosperity. And neither one of them are going to come and go when we would like them to, or when we have our own expectations due to our own ego. It is all transitory. It's short-lived. The adversities we go through, short-lived, can be defined very differently depending on how you look at things. It could be a few hours, a few days, a few months, a few years. I mean, even a few years could technically be short-lived if you're comparing it to many years. But either way, all is transitory, and the time spirit just continues to do the dance and change things of the world. And like fruits that fall from trees, people continue to fall day by day into the gaping jaws of death, shaken by the wind of time. So these human embodiments, we're kind of like fruit falling from a tree. So if you think of like a apple tree or a pear tree or a peach tree, and if a storm comes in and it bangs the tree around and everything, and then the fruits fall, over time, the fruit, it becomes rotten. You can't eat it, you can't use it. And so we're kind of like that. We're shaken by the wind of time, and then we fall from the tree of life, and we're no longer in this embodiment. And this happens all over the world, and it continuously happens. It doesn't just happen based on our local news reports on how many people have passed away, but it's every second of every day. And then also, people are born, more souls in the embodiments every second of every day, and the wind of time just keeps shaking things up. And so sometimes there could be large amounts of fruit that fall from a tree, and sometimes not. And it's how you want to look at things. But I think of like natural disasters. If you think of an area where there's not much going on, and then a natural disaster comes through, that kind of changes the amount. And so people continue to fall into the gaping jaws of death due to time, and people age and then pass away, and we can't stop it as much as science and wealthy people. You might be able to slow it down a little bit, but you can't stop the aging process. We can't live forever. And so this wraps up the end of section 28, the transient nature of all sense enjoyments. I hope y'all enjoyed it. And next week we will continue on. If not, I'll make a post about it. Due to the holidays, I know people are traveling and they're busy with the Christmas holidays and New Year's, but I'll try to still do one next week. More than likely I will. So next week will be the essencelessness of all objects. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Thank you, everyone that joined. I hope y'all have a good evening, and I'll see you next week.